Thank you. Okay, it's Nick Jonsson here doing the self-recording of the podcast. The first question is, what mental health disorders have you dealt with through your life? Anxiety, depression, or bipolar, etc. And my answer is that a lot of anxiety, and later on also in my career, stress, and that led indeed later on to depression. I didn't talk about my challenges, so that was the big issue for me, that I kept it secret. So a lot of loneliness also in this, and this also led me to picking up an alcohol addiction in order to depress my feelings and so on, and to feel better. I picked up too much alcohol, and in the end it became an addiction. So those are the disorders that I've been struggling with through my life. Question 2, your overall experience with a mental health disorder. The issue with my disorders was that I kept it secret and silent, and that, according to me, is the biggest problem, because if we hide behind the smile, then no one really knows. And in my book called Executive Loneliness, I actually call this a smiling depression. And this is very common for senior executives like myself. I worked my way up the career ladder, and in my book I also interviewed other senior executives, and I realized that I was not alone. It's very, very common for someone working their way up in the corporate ladder that you are hiding your weaknesses and your issues and your challenges simply because you want to make it to the next level, and you want to perhaps become the big GM or the managing director of the company one day. That was one goal I had, and nothing was going to come in the way for me to reach the top of the career. And in the end, I found myself in a company with 300-400 staff as the general manager. And before I knew it, I was feeling lonely. That was a challenge for me, and I was not ready for it. I was not prepared for it. And this is nothing that the school prepared me for. No one told me about it. Looking back now at this, I knew I could have dealt with it in a different way. So the number one issue for me was the silence and the loneliness that came with that. But the disorders was all part of it, and they would have been solved if I only spoke about it. So that was the issue. Number 3, the difficulties you faced throughout your life as a result of your mental health disorder. Well, it's been huge pain, and it's been a roller coaster of a journey. It led me to a divorce in 2015. It also led me to living in 7 countries, resigning from jobs and being fired from jobs simply because I was covering up for something that was not really functioning behind the scene. I was working hard, delivering results, but I was not feeling good behind the scene. And when you're not feeling good about yourself, then relationships can from time to time, both at work and at home, become difficulty. And that was what I was facing. And I didn't want to face the issues and challenges. So if I was laid off from a job, I wouldn't talk about it to anyone. I would just simply leave the country and move to another place and get a new job there. And I would tell everyone on the outside, and even my family and close friends, that, well, I was just tired of that job. This is a better opportunity. So I would make every move seem like it was a great opportunity, but behind the scene, and the truth was that it was not. I was indeed going through a very challenging time, and there was some reasons why I left the job, such as feeling lonely, depressed, or having a lot of anxiety. Number 4, how to cope with it. In my case, it had to go pretty far. I had to be hospitalized for my disorder before I started to recover. For a long time, I was trying to look up on Google, reading books, and self-medicate myself to get well. Nothing worked. And I have to say that one of the drugs that I used the most to feel better about myself was alcohol. But as you all know, that's not going to be sustainable. I used it perhaps after work when I was stressed, to calm down, to feel a bit relaxed, to feel at ease. I felt that I've done a good job and I deserved it. And perhaps it worked for the short term, but the next day it felt worse, and it was a downward spiral for me. I also then stopped exercising. I put on weight. My health gradually went down. And it went as far as that I really realized that I have to stop alcohol and I have to get better and healthier if I want to break the pattern here. But it was very difficult. So when I finally wanted to stop alcohol, I was addicted to it. And that was a scary moment when you want to stop, but you cannot stop. At that point, basically, I realized that the addiction was running my life and ruining my life. And I could not have any moment of peace without alcohol in my body. So what I had to do was I had to come to an anonymous support group for other problem drinkers to get support with this. And this was perhaps in my case life-saving, because my health and my organs in my body was very bad at this time. And I can remember lying on my bed, looking at my left foot, which was so swollen from the anxiety, but also from overconsumption of alcohol, that I was wondering what will happen to my foot. And it was so swollen that I couldn't get on a sock and a shoe at that stage. And that's when I decided to really ask for help. And that was the change and what really turned everything around and how I started to cope with it. And first I only spoke about my issue and my challenge with a doctor and at hospital and in this anonymous support group. But after a while, I started to get some confidence and I started to tell a few close friends about what was going on. I told my family and I started suddenly to feel much better about myself. So this was one way for me to cope with it, was to start talking about it. And it was only 1 year into my recovery when a friend of mine sadly died of suicide here in Singapore where I live. And that was a wake-up call for me. I had at this stage only spoken about my challenges and issues in a pretty safe environment. But when he sadly went way too early, I decided to speak up. I decided to tell people about the issues I had been facing a year earlier and that I was now in recovery feeling much better. I did at that time a LinkedIn post that went viral. And before I knew it, I found myself in a radio interview telling the whole world about my recovery. I was in the newspaper and magazines, and this was the start of a long journey for me. And it led to that I started to write my own book, a book called Executive Loneliness, which you can find on Amazon. It's a bestseller on Amazon, where I'm sharing my journey and indeed, how could I cope with my disorder and how could I overcome this loneliness and these feelings I had inside me, and how could I break then the alcoholic addiction. And I'm happy and proud to say that thanks to the people who helped me in the program, I'm this week 4 years without alcohol, and it has been the biggest relief and the best thing I have ever done for myself and my family and my loved ones, to actually manage to stop the bad pattern I had. With that, many other things also came back to me in my life, and today my life is great. What I can recommend to everyone here on the last question is that you need to talk about how you feel. You cannot suppress your feelings. If, for example, at work, you cannot talk to your boss, your colleagues, or HR, find a safe place outside your work where you can talk about your challenges. May it be to a doctor, a therapist, or an anonymous support group, or perhaps get a coach, a mentor, whoever it is. Make sure you never ever go to bed with something really burning on your mind, and you have that pain in your chest that it's painful and you don't know how to deal with it. You must find someone to talk about it. That is my number one tip. A second tip then is, once you have learned this, is never go to bed also if you have said something rude or sent an email that was not polite, or a message to someone during the day that was not nice. Go back and make amends before you go to bed. Write the message to them, say, sorry, that didn't come out right. Let me call you tomorrow. You do that to clean basically your inventory every single day. So when you go to bed, you know that you've done everything you can to be the best person for everyone around you. So that's my final tip. And if you read my book, Executive Loneliness, you can in more detail see the 5 steps to overcome loneliness. Thank you so much.